What is good, party people? I am so happy to see all of you bright, shiny faces that are joining us right here on this lovely Thursday afternoon, a couple of days before UFC ends its 1 week off here again with another Apex card, UFC Vegas 85. Pretty interesting middleweight main event to come on that. You guys know the drill here. 13 fights. Maddie and I are going to break them all down the best we can and get you set for Saturday from a betting perspective. We do have a lot of props already available on FanDuel. That's why we've gone to a Thursday show. You can lock some of these in right now. So I have to, before I do anything else, I need to turn it over to my buddy, the man, the myth, the long shot legend, Matty Tanner, and ask him a very important question. What are you doing today?
Dude, what do we got? Like, it's like 11 straight cars or something?
Yeah, it's 9 straight weeks is what
Okay,
Clint told me, Clint McLean of the Die Hard podcast, 9 straight weeks of UFC action. So we are ready.
Bro, that's incredible. 9 straight weeks. We're blessed.
And I some of these cards may not bless us particularly. We saved a huge fight with some drama in the MMA community today. Benoit Saint Denis, Dustin Poirier off and now back on again. Sounds like a money thing if you ask me, but
Yeah. Poirier's negotiating.
and I don't think Dana White was too happy about him going rogue, but that's a different story for a different day. We are here to break down the 13 fights on Saturday, get you all set from that perspective. And so why don't we dive in and just start on that, because this first fight up is going to take a little bit to chew on. Some of these I actually texted Maddie earlier this week. I don't really know how I'm supposed to guess, like, for instance, in this fight, which one of these guys gets tired first, but we will try to do our best. Heavyweights on the docket, first fight up out of the gate. Thomas Peterson coming off the Contender Series, making his official UFC debut. He's taking on Jamal Pogues on the other side here. Pogues, we've seen him in UFC. He actually has a 1-1 record in UFC thus far, coming off a loss to Mick Parkin late last year, I guess middle of last year or so. Maddie, couple of guys that not super well known for their conditioning, not super high level heavyweight, but just curious if you dug in and maybe you see a side to some betting value with Peterson sitting at -186, a pretty decent size favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I think that's a lot of juice in this fight. I tend to lean the dog or pass here. These guys shouldn't even be heavyweights, man. If they were just in better shape, if they were just in better shape, they honestly wouldn't be heavyweights. But I think Jamal Pogues, I think he has a decent enough. I don't want to hear your opinion, but I think he has a decent enough takedown defense that he could just win this fight standing and maybe do more on a scorecard. I know Peterson's never been the distance. I was in the 3 fights, including the Contender Series. I know Pogues has, I think a 2 or 3 inch reach advantage. I think it is there, 3 inches.
Yeah.
And I think I know Peterson had that submission win, but I think that was kind of just a sloppy.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see that. I don't see it playing out that way here. I think Jamal Pogues could probably win this fight just on the feet, defending some takedowns and outpointing him. And I would lean that way on the plus money, but this is probably a fight that isn't going to make my betting card, if we're being honest.
I totally understand that. I actually talked to a guy with a 2-unit bet on this fight, and I said, why? Because I think the scale on Friday will be pivotal here, because we saw Jamal Pogues come in quite a bit heavier against Mick Parkin, really seemed to affect his activity level. But you said, hey, I want to ask you about his takedown defense. I kind of agree. Offensive and defensive wrestling usually correlates, and we've seen Pogues get some nice work done with his takedowns. Landed 5 on Josh Parisian, landed 7 on a Contender Series appearance where UFC actually said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need another wrestler in here. But honestly, Pogues has shown okay stand-up at times. He's got a pretty good jab. His accuracy metrics, like 42%, not ideal, but through a fight with Mick Parkin, who is a guy that I think you and I both kind of like, training partner of Tom Aspinall. He could go either way. Like, I wasn't over the moon about his last performance, but I still think he's pretty decent.
Right.
You said both these guys, if they were in shape, Jamal Pogues fought regionally at 185. He fought on the Contender Series at 205, and now here he is at heavyweight in UFC. So, well, I think that's the Jake Collier path. But the thing about that is, what do we get from Collier? We get the athleticism, some of the activity that maybe you don't get from a standard heavyweight. And so I think Pogues' takedown defense decides this fight. If he's able to stuff Peterson's entries, which, by the way, kind of sloppy, looks like a dude who just was a D1 wrestler that translated over to UFC, doesn't really set them up with his striking very much at all. And If Post can defend those shots, he's 2 of 3. So yeah, 2 of 3 so far in UFC. He's undoubtedly to me the better striker here. I totally agree with you that I think this one is dog or pass. Because if Peterson's not getting takedowns early, it's going to be a very, very ugly night for him. I don't really know exactly what the upside is for him, even if he gets them. Pose has shown enough. I would love to see him come in at like 255, 258 in better shape, and then I might actually fire onto my betting card. But otherwise, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I mean, would you even consider Pugs on like a TKO here?
Yeah, I would. We haven't seen any submission attempts from him yet in UFC. Peterson actually wasn't really a submission guy before the Contender Series, and I invite you, if you haven't seen the fight, go back and look at Peterson's Contender Series opponent. The dude looks like he belongs on Power Slap, not in MMA. Like he
Right.
just a big beer belly, would have Chris Barnett beat as far as BMI in UFC is concerned, right? Not really a guy that you can say, hey, that's going to translate to UFC level success, even though Contender Series built Peterson up. He was a huge favorite in that fight. Like, this is an intriguing first test for Peterson, and I don't love the asking price here. I think we're getting Pogues at the bare minimum of his value since we've seen him in UFC circles, and Peterson is probably at his apex.
Yeah, I'm with you. We're definitely aligned there.
Cool. But we won't spend much more time on that because we ultimately don't know, again, which one of those heavyweights might get tired first. But here's a much better fight in the second fight. I think it's actually an intriguing one, like to MMA diehards here. Landon Quinones coming off an impressive debut against Nasrat Haqparast, even though he lost. Anytime Conor McGregor tweets you out, you probably enter UFC fan circles. McGregor said Quinones is tough as nails, liked him on his team on The Ultimate Fighter. Taking on a Contender Series appearance as well. Markel Maderos here, who's coming back actually as a minus 150 favorite. Maderos trains near me here in Inglewood at Factory X. Impressive knockout on the Contender Series. That always comes with a caveat, though. We've seen Quinones shrink quite a bit this week. He was plus 132 on Monday, now plus 110 currently live on FanDuel Sportsbook, so we couldn't even snag the line movement there. Do you agree with the sharp movement toward Quinones, or did you find Maderos more impressive, or is this fight kind of a pass in general for you?
Yeah, I thought Landon looked really good in that last fight, man. I haven't spent a lot of time watching footage on this fight, but I mean, is he still what's he sitting at? So he's still plus 110 on FanDuel right now. It's not bad.
No.
But this is another fight where I'm dog or pass again. Like I feel like if you bet the first 2 fights of this card and take both dogs, you're gonna go 1-1 at minimum.
Interesting.
In my opinion,
Yeah.
I think that you could blindly take the 2 dogs to start this card and hopefully have a profit here. But I'm dog or pass again on the second fight here.
Yeah. I don't have a good, and anybody that listens to our show knows I'm no film expert, so I don't have that particular caveat. I will say Maderos looked impressive on the Contender Series, but that's always the juxtaposition of who was he facing. He was facing Isa Isakov, who was more of a grappler type. He was going to have an advantage standing in that fight. These Factory X guys, you kind of know what you get. The mix in leg kicks, good hard rights. The jab is going to be there. All of these guys kind of come from a similar vein, and we saw that Maderos plus 3.85 striking success rate on the Contender Series. But you look how closely Quinones just fought Nasrat Haqparast. It was a very worthwhile effort. An account that I do recommend following because I love MMA analytics, MMA RAX, tweeted out they like Maderos because Quinones' striking defense didn't seem encouraging. I couldn't disagree more. It was 54% against Nasrat, who is just really, really talented. We know he's great with the hands. He's 8-4 in UFC, and we just saw him knock down a zombie of Jamie Malarkey when you and I both kind of leaned Malarkey in that fight, and Haqparast knocked him out in the first round.
Bro, that 8, that 8. I mean, Landon going the distance with Nasrat and then him coming out and knocking out Jamie Malarkey quickly. I mean, that aged really well, and he was super competitive. He landed, I think, 145 strikes in that fight. I think the dude's solid.
And you think about, this is great matchmaking by the UFC because Quinones, where we've seen him struggle regionally, is someone with the submission stuff. He was submitted on the Ultimate Fighter as well. Markel Maderos, no pro wins or losses by submission. Factory X is more of a striking gym anyway, even though Maderos has gone to some wrestling and some grappling in his regional footage. But I don't expect him to be a stud in that department. I expect it to be a striking base. And if I got a 15-minute striking match, Quinones coming back at plus 120, shown to be durable. What's the reach looking like? Quinones has 1 inch of reach here. So you could certainly do far worse from plus 110 perspective. I ended up on both of these underdogs as like just I would pick them to win outright. So I totally agree with you. If we split 1-1 on the first two fights of the night, make a little bit of profit, I'd be totally happy with that outcome.
Yeah, 100%. We're aligned.
Yeah. So, another fight here at women's flyweight, kind of another stylistic matchup a little bit here. Luana Carolina, maybe a little bit underrated. She was an underdog in her last fight against someone totally fresh coming off the Contender Series in Ivana Petrovic. She ended up stuffing all the takedowns, ended up getting the win. We saw her go the distance with Joanne Wood. And then Julia Stolyarenko on the other side here drops down to flyweight, makes a huge statement by submitting Molly McCann and is a pretty sizable underdog. She's a little bit of a specialist. Round one arm bars are kind of her thing, like 10 of her 11 wins by submission. Most of those by arm bar. That's kind of what she does. I think clearly one lady will have an advantage in either domain here. It's just about which side wins out. Do you have strong lean here? Because it sounds like I'm very excited for this women's MMA fight, and I'm not sure most others are.
Yeah, I mean, so Luana lost to Molly McCann, back in 2022?
Yeah, that was the spinning fist in London.
Yeah,
Remember?
the highlight. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that was the knockout that really put Molly McCann on the map. That was like, and then she was such a good fade from that point on. It felt
Yep.
like, what are the odds sitting at right now?
Stolyarenko's slight favorite. Let me see what we got live. So she's minus 134. So these basically haven't budged. It's gone a little bit in Carolina's direction, but not really. It actually looks FanDuel will do this sometimes, by the way. If you bet a different time of the week, you get a different hold. Like Carolina's plus 110, Stolyarenko minus 134. So actually both ladies shortened. They're just reducing the hold there from what we have up on the screen. So it's about the same. It's interesting to me Stolyarenko is favored here. I think it's just a clear dual-sided fight. Carolina's going to be the better striker. The concern with her, she's shown good takedown defense, but if she gets taken down, Ariane Lipsky landed a knee bar on her, right? Really tore up her knee. That was a meme submission type of thing. The back fist. I feel like Stolyarenko, if she's able to get this fight to the ground, should be able to get her sequence in a right spot to get an armbar or a triangle, because Carolina doesn't seem super comfortable down there. And we saw how that worked for Molly McCann, who's a little bit of the same type of archetype.
Yeah. What do you think of a violence bet here? I want to see what the number is. Actually,
I love it.
It's actually right now.
It's my favorite bet in the fight. I think I saw is coming back around minus 120 when I saw it posted somewhere there. It's a lot shorter than you might think for like a women's MMA fight here, but what that is Stolyarenko doesn't have any sort of striking whatsoever. If you look at her striking defense, it's rancid. Let me take a look here. 44%. She was knocked out by Chelsea Chandler. Like, if she can't get her takedowns going, which is more of a size physicality thing, she struggled with some of that at 135. She has no striking offense whatsoever. She's going to be gassed, charging in over and over again. And Carolina, she's knocked down a couple of UFC opponents, has some power. Like, I want to play this like Stolyarenko round one submission and then tag Carolina 2-3 KO on the back end, because we haven't really seen much submission prowess from Luana. So I like that dual-sided aspect to violence here when these ladies are so one-dimensional, so in their element. It's just a matter of Carolina's takedown defense deciding the fight.
Yeah. I mean, she has that win over Lupi Godinez, man.
If you remember, Lupi was on 7 days notice for that fight. She had just beat Silvana Juarez Gomez. She goes up in weight. And Carolina is pretty big for this flyweight class, 5'6". Godinez was giving up a ton of size there. Otherwise, maybe I think on a full camp to get to 125, I'm pretty sure Lupi would win.
Yeah, I mean, you go from beating Lupi to then losing the Molly McCann and Joanne Wood back to back.
And there are other results of hers that are like concerning more so earlier. Like she dominated in her debut, Priscilla Cachoeira. We saw her against Jazz Davicius, just totally not skilled. Carolina had every sort of advantage. I actually thought she was going to be a pretty interesting prospect, but I actually had higher hopes for her in her last fight, given her experience edge she had over Petrovic. It was like a perfect type of fight for her. The difference between Petrovic and Stolyarenko, not only do you have UFC legitimized success with takedowns, Stolyarenko has a far better submission record as well if she's able to just get one. So now that I'm thinking about I might have to go round 2 with Stolyarenko just in case, but for her division, she converts at a very high clip in the first round.
Yeah.
It's just
No,
something you don't see very often in women's flyweight.
yeah. I mean, -120, is that under 2.5 or fight not to go the distance?
I believe that was under 2.5 when I saw it. This book, that was not at FanDuel. I don't believe it's come out on FanDuel yet,
Yeah,
but
it's not
it's a
out on
different book.
FanDuel yet. It reminds me a little bit of, which fight was it recently? The Polyana Viana fight. I
Yeah.
think that violence bet was like -190, and
Mhm.
we loved it, but it's like it's still women's MMA, and every time you bet a violence bet, you always regret it.
Yeah.
But this one's priced a lot better,
Mhm.
and a lot of finishes between the 2 girls, not as many as I think as the Viana fight, but
Mhm.
it's pretty comparable, and you're getting a better price point on it. So,
Mhm.
I would lean the under 2.5 in this spot.
Yeah, and you know how, like, system bets can appear in different sports, like, you think, like, unranked home favorites in college basketball against someone who is ranked, like, that is a quick system that is proven to be profitable over time.
Yeah,
Maybe something we wanna track here is these women's MMA unders where they're, like, sub -150, right? Or, like, -120 or shorter. Then odds
yeah.
makers are saying, "Hey, here's plus money on a women's MMA fight to finish within the distance." Which side do you think the public is going to smash when the historical trends of this division are all overs? But then there are rare exceptions, like a Jillian Robertson, like a Julia Stolyarenko. Stolyarenko, I think she's only gone over. Let's see, how many times has she gone over? She's only gone over in 3 of her 7 fights, which is a very low clip for women's MMA. She's much more of a
Right,
finisher than you might expect.
right. No, for sure.
So
Interesting.
yeah, I actually modeled that guy. It's about 50-50, which is just about the odds, so I don't really have any discernible value. The under was what popped up for me, and it's giving Stolyarenko about a 27% chance to finish, Carolina
Yeah,
about 12%. That kinda dictates my lean on the money line if I were gonna take it. Is Stolyarenko just a little more dangerous?
makes sense.
Cool. So, another I texted you before the show. I said, "Hey, I'm not sure my research actually helped me decide if I was gonna pick fights correctly this week." This is another one where I kinda know what it looks like, but I don't really know what's going to win out here. Jung Young Lee, the Korean Tiger, making his UFC debut, coming off Road to UFC. You guys know I hate Road to UFC. I think it's just most of the prospects that come off of there are a level below maybe traditional American, European, Brazilian MMA prospects. With that reserve, Jung Young Lee probably deserves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here because he has shown knockout power through there. He has shown elite size here. And then he's taking on Blake Bilder, a guy that burned me a lot in his last fight against Kyle Nelson. I don't know if he burned anyone else out there. Bilder looked like he was in a great position, but it became very evident he struggled with Kyle Nelson's physicality. And now Nelson not only beat Bilder, he also destroyed the chalk party with Fernando Padilla in the next fight as well. So Nelson is giving these guys problems. I don't know how much I knock Blake Bilder for that now in hindsight, but he is a little small for this featherweight class. Great cardio, not going to give up on himself. It is an interesting fight here. I was just wondering if you had one of these guys that maybe you were more impressed with than the other.
Yeah, you know what I wanna look at in this fight
Yeah.
is, the fight to end in round 3.
Interesting.
Either way. So here, let me pull this up. Let's see. He has 1, 2. Wait, I'm trying to figure out where I had this here. Okay, never mind. I'm tripping right here. I thought I had something written down on the, on that price point for each guy here, and it was just insane. Hold on.
Yeah. I like a violence bet here. I think I do, which may be a bit of a surprise for me based on where I thought I started because Bilder is kind of a tough, grind you out. He's gone to a decision in his first 2 UFC fights, but if you go back and watch Bilder, he gets dropped a lot. Like especially regionally, he took a jab early from Nelson and never really came forward with that same level of aggressiveness. If you put up the comment in chat, Bilder was slow and bad in his last fight. That's the exact opposite of what he can be because he doesn't have size, and that's why you get a fight that looks like it did against Nelson. Couldn't land takedowns, couldn't efficiently land offense. The problem is Jung Young Lee had a pretty weird fight himself on the Road to UFC finale. I remember staying up for it at like 2 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Eastern, just to see the fight. It was the road to UFC finale. He was facing Yi Jia, and Jia just kept spamming takedown attempts. Jung Young Lee really wasn't able to get a lot of distance striking going. Was landing good elbows and knees in the clinch that allowed him to get the split decision there. Builder will try that. Interestingly enough, it looks like from some of his social media stuff that he is trying to lean more into a grappling heavy approach, which would be curious against Jung Young Lee when Lee showed well with his takedown defense, defended 16 of 21 from Yi Jia. But again, the caveat there, I don't know how good Yi Jia is. I don't know how that's going to translate once we get to UFC, but in general here, I'm not going to bet this fight like a side because Lee is the side I would pick. He's larger, younger, better athlete, has shown more finishing upside regionally. But I think I just would like to tap into Builder's durability issues, maybe some grappling issues that we've potentially seen from Lee in the past. I kind of lean under in this particular fight without a really strong read one way or another.
And who would you give the cardio edge to?
But Builder for sure. Lee
Right. And
like he was slowing down a little bit.
yeah, and that's what I was looking at here because I think if Lee can't get him out in round 1 or 2, I was looking at like a Builder round 3 or decision prop. Him just to win in round 3 is plus 1,600.
Yeah.
I mean,
just in general, I like that because I would say ground and pound and submission.
Ground and pound's live,
yeah.
Yeah, round 3 for Lee is 11-1. Round 3 for Builder is 16-1. I don't know why it jumped off the page to me for some reason in this fight. I just might have been more of an intuition thing.
Your gut feelings are like you had that gut feeling about Neil Magny round 3 in Canada.
I'm so disgusted. I can't believe I'm just telling you, bro. And the worst part is even though I didn't put it out on my card before the fight started, I still almost bet it.
Yeah.
And I was disgusted when that hit because I literally texted you a day or two before, and I'm like, Mike Malott, like, he could gas here. Like, he's probably going to get him out, but if he doesn't, he could gas. And look how many finishes Neil Magny has in round 3 in his career. And the numbers were ridiculous. And that, to me, was the worst beat, one of the worst beats I've had. There's just no worse feeling than like being spot on something, especially when it's a long shot, and then not playing it or not giving it out. I was so disgusted about that fight, bro.
All I will say is that, like, it's not that I want to recommend going overboard and wagering on too many things, but you have a gut lean toward Builder. It makes sense practically that we know he's got the cardio advantage. He is always coming forward and pushing the pace. And it's a small dart that if the durability, if the size is a problem, Jung Young Lee probably gets him out of there pretty quickly. Like, he was landing hard punches on Yi Jia. Like, Jia was very durable and impressive in that moment. I think Yi Jia's on next week's card, so we'll talk about him again. This is the loveliness that the Apex gives us here, right? But oh, that's a great question. At ASwaim3 on X or Twitter or whatever they call it now, ASWAIM3, as well as I'm on FanDuel Research, FanDuel.com/research/UFC if you want to find my stuff. I'm sorry to interrupt myself, but I wasn't really going anywhere anyway, just to say it's a small stake that you could put on Builder round 3, 16-1, and you probably will regret not betting if it hits more than the quarter unit that you put on it, right?
I'm going to read this text I sent to Austin for everyone watching right now.
Yeah.
This was on Friday, January 19th, the day before the UFC
night before.
card, right? I literally texted Austin and I screenshot and didn't put it on Twitter. I said, bro, Neil Magny round 3 could be a sneaky fucking play. Plus 3,800 on the knockout, plus 5,000 on the submission. Mike Malott's gas tank looked extremely low before he got that club and sub in round 2 against Fugit. And I literally said that word for word. And Austin said, interesting. I said, Magny has a ton of round 3 wins. And I said, if Malott gasses, anything's possible.
Right. And I said,
I didn't play it. I didn't play it, so it doesn't matter, but it's sick. That was 38-1 odds, and I should have played it.
Maddie, I said I could see Magny winning round 3, but a finish would be wild. It was indeed wild. That was ridiculous to see in real time that Malott just kind of shut off.
Those are the ones I have to hit, and I didn't play it. Like, why would I not sprinkle a quarter unit on that? It's just it's crazy, bro. I'm sick over it.
Bottom line, do a little tape study. Make sure you don't lose your Blake Builder gut feeling if you get that, because your spidey sense for that is a lot better than mine. Remember, I don't have any sort of gut feeling. If it's a chin bet, I'm terrible. I'm useless in that regard. So we got to rely on you for that. But This next fight up, I'm really excited to talk about him. I already have it highlighted. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow on my show, and as well as I'm covering the spread quite a bit. I love this fight from a betting perspective. Themba Gorimbo, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's favorite fighter, coming off a win over Takashi Sato via decision. Remember, he got AJ Fletcher on very short notice. It didn't go well for him. Taking on Pete Dead Game Rodriguez, who's like a little bit of a meme at this point, gets that short notice bout with Jack Della Maddalena that was just wildly lopsided. Like you see what JDM has become. They should not have sanctioned that with poor Pete here.
Yeah.
But then in his next fight, another meme, Mike Jackson, the guy who beat up on CM Punk, right? Pete Rodriguez ended up absolutely stoning him with a flying knee. So he's felt the highs and the lows of UFC already. Trains out at the MMA lab with Sean O'Malley, Jared Cannonier, a lot of other good guys out at that gym. Interesting fight. I see smart guys on both sides of this fight. I have a strong lean, and I'm just curious about your take on it.
Now, so what do you think about Mike Jackson? Because, what, 4 fights in the UFC, 1 win by DQ, and then 3 losses, including the knockout loss to Pete Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, is this a spot to sell Pete on, right? Like, is that knockout really not mean shit?
Yeah.
And is this a bad spot to take him? Because I'm not high on either of these guys. I think minus 260 is a tough price to pay here, but at the same time, I'm wondering, like, that Mike Jackson knockout, maybe it doesn't really mean much.
Yeah. I don't think it does mean very much to me. The reason why I like Pete and I want to give him a chance is number one, the gym. Those guys coming, Marcus McGee coming out of the gym, Mario Bautista. Like, it's one of the best MMA gyms in the country, feeding talent into UFC. He will have problems in UFC because he can't make his organic weight class at 5'9", which is lightweight. Like, he had that fight with Natan Levy that never came to fruition. He couldn't make it to the scales, and Levy called him a crybaby, if you remember. But
yeah.
He's going to struggle with a lot of matchups in UFC because of that size, because of that physicality. But I was really actually encouraged by his work against Della Maddalena on just a few days' notice, right? And he landed 22 of his own significant strikes in that first round. He goes out, Jack, we know what a good boxer he is at this point. But Pete's hand speed, to me, it translates. Like, the Jackson win doesn't mean anything in a vacuum. Really, yeah. I think I've said this 3 times now. I'm going to say it for the 3rd time here. I think Pete Rodriguez takedown defense decides this fight. Maybe it's possible Themba is too big, too strong, is able to control him, but we also didn't see any sort of submission skill from Gorimbo whatsoever against a guy that is a prime submission candidate in Takashi Sato, right? Like, Gunnar Nelson got Sato out of there. Plenty of other guys have. Gorimbo didn't show that. So I'll take Pete's hands with 15 minutes to work at plus 200 on the off chance maybe, he gets ragdolled because he's not big enough for that time. But Gorimbo, 42% takedown defense is super hittable. Rodriguez has put out over 20 significant strikes a minute so far. Like, I think it's irresponsible to not bet Pete Rodriguez by first round knockout, depending on what it's coming back. I can't imagine he's shorter than like 6-1, at which point, let me see if I can find it here.
Yeah, it's +5. Round 1's +550 for Rodriguez knockout. Round 2's +1200, and round 3's +2400. I was actually leaning 2-3 kind of in this spot. I mean, what do you think about Gorimbo's cardio? And if he does get some early takedowns in round 1 and this fight progresses, and we still think Pete's hands are live later on, like, those numbers are crazy. 12-1 round 2, 24-1 round 3.
Yeah. That's actually, Maddie, like, I'm so glad you brought that up, because everybody that I've talked to this week, you can see it in our chat right now, is saying Pete Rodriguez round 1 knockout. That's where the value is. That's where the value is. Like, I'm a little concerned that this is a public dog. Now, some of the money splits I've seen don't look that way. Still, a majority of the action on Gorimbo here. That is the angle that might be curious, because what is one of MMA Lab's staples? Great defensive takedown defense. Sean O'Malley's got it. Jared Cannonier's got it. Like, that's one of the gym's staples. Rodriguez maybe has to defend Gorimbo's advances because he's neutralizing his offense early. But if he gets tired and he wilts, and sometimes I do think he gets tired. If you've seen some of his other results, he's been knocked out before. Like, he has faded into fights. Rodriguez at 170, I think, will be at least pretty fresh because he's not cutting very much weight at 5'9". Like, he's probably not cutting very much. He'll probably be decently fresh. That is an interesting angle, and that's how the books take our money, is that we're all betting round 1, and then all of a sudden Gorimbo's able to control the first round, and Rodriguez maybe ends up winning via that angle later. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because all I've heard is round 1 KO this week, and it makes me I'm like, I don't know what his other path would be, but I think you just discovered it.
Yeah, bro. I mean, I hope it hits because it's gonna be a great clip for later. But I want to look at some of his fights here before the UFC.
I think I'm going.
I mean, every fight has been round one, pretty much, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he's been outside the first round. At least
Even his amateur.
Yeah,
he has one round two finish in the amateurs in 2019. But literally all of his knockouts, you're talking 10, 12 finishes have been round one.
I think the price is just dictating my enthusiasm, because if this was like Garembo minus 130, Rodriguez coming back a little bit shorter than that, I'd really have to think about it. Like his size, the cardio potential issues, because we haven't seen him extended so far. But I get plus 200 just outright on the money line. Let me check what his knockouts plus 290s, and then so I probably could do a half unit on the money line, half unit on the knockout, and then probably a quarter unit on. I might actually do like an eighth of a unit now on round 2 and 3, given that I just feel like round 1 knockout it's sitting there at 5.5 to 1 for a reason. It's been slammed. Now Rodriguez is shortened a little bit here. He's plus 196. I've seen him up north of plus 200. So I'll get a little bit of money. I might back your angle on that. That's going to be one we're going to have to talk about. But
so Garembo, so the last 1, 2, 3, 4, the last 4 fights he's lost, 3 of them he was finished in round 2.
Pete or Garembo?
Garembo.
Oh, interesting. That is very interesting. Oh, I guess you're right, because he survived the first against Fletcher, and then the regional.
And if you can survive the first against AJ Fletcher, who's pretty explosive, I'd like to think he can survive in this matchup.
Fletcher's kind of a similar build to Rodriguez.
Yeah. He probably is more wrestling.
Exactly.
But now here's some crazy shit for you. The 3 of those 4 fights that I just said, they were all they were guillotine choke, and triangle choke. Does Pete Rodriguez have any of that in his arsenal here? Because let me pull up these numbers real quick.
We certainly haven't. We haven't seen it professionally. Like, he doesn't have a submission result professionally, but I have
50 to 1 round 2 submission, 50 to 1 round 3 submission on FanDuel. If he gasses, it is live.
I think that's a good discussion. If for no other reason than Rodriguez round 2 is at plus 1,000, round 3 is 2,100. That's not that much shorter than just his knockout. So be safe, because like this could be a meme fight in a lot of different ways. And I was lauding up his gym at MMA Lab. What have we seen from Mario Bautista? Like, what have we seen? Marcus McGee got a club and sub in his debut, right? Like, these guys prefer to strike, but they're not well-rounded. And if you could put up the comment, how well does Rodriguez get up from takedowns? He hasn't been taken down yet officially in UFC. I haven't seen any regional footage of him getting taken down. He's crushing cans regionally, just knocking them out very quickly. But I don't know that answer. I'd feel a lot better if I did. But again, I think the price dictates the action for me. He's my favorite money line underdog on the card.
I like it. Again, it's dog or pass for me, so I'm aligned. I would probably play some of these round props.
I just know he's the value side, but you're so right about the round props, bro. Everyone's going to take a bath on that round 1 knockout that likes Rodriguez. That's all I've heard.
I mean, it is a good number still, plus 550.
It is a good number. You can only take so much of a bath on it, but like when everybody's all on a 6 to 1 prop, bro, how often does it hit?
Yeah. 100%.
So we'll move on here. I think we've got another Apex special here. Azat Maxim, aka Shavkat's boy at flyweight, didn't exactly have the most impressive UFC debut. Still did get a split decision win to maintain an undefeated 17-0 record. Hard to beat that, right? When the streak column on our screen says 17. Taking on Charles Johnson, a guy that's taken plenty of money from you and I. Probably his last UFC fight on his contract. If he doesn't win, it's probably his last fight in UFC. He's taking this on short notice. Is it because that he thinks he has an angle to beat Maxim, or is he just kind of a guy that doesn't make good decisions? We'll find out on Saturday. I'm curious what your thoughts here are on this guy.
I can't trust him. I can't trust him at all. I don't think plus 150 is anywhere enough near. That's not enough plus money for me to even think about taking a stab at him. He is historically pretty durable, though.
Mhm.
And you got to wonder if you would play the favorite here on the decision prop. I want to see what that
Mhm.
number is.
Well,
Um,
Johnson's never been professionally finished, so you're dead on with that.
yeah.
Let's see.
Let me see what that. I want to see what that number comes in at here.
Plus 110. So plus
Yeah.
110, you shorten the juice quite a bit if you go by decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to watch some more footage on this one, but that's where my head's at right now is on the decision prop here.
Mhm.
I can't trust Charles Johnson at all. I mean, he has fought. I mean, even his last knockout win was against Jimmy Flick. He fights a ton. He's super active.
Yeah.
It
I
just reminds me of a guy that's just collecting checks, you know.
he
I
might
mean, seriously, January, February, April, November. Like it's 4 fights. I mean,
he might be. I would hate to see him go because I thought he beat Rafael Estevem in his last fight. Like I think that should
yeah,
have been a win that went his way. The Ode Osborne split decision. He came on in round 3. That could have gone either way. A little bit that what we saw from a guy that he beat, Jalga Zhumagulov, just couldn't get the right end of those split decisions. But like I think my big takeaway from my research is that Azat Maxim is really good, and he got a really difficult matchup for him in his first fight against Tyson Nam. Tyson Nam's thing is like elite defense, 65% striking defense, 87% takedown defense. Those are both 90th percentile better in this division. Nam's thing is that he's just not very active or efficient as an offensive striker, but we know the power. Maxim was just not able to get much offense going, as most Tyson Nam opponents are. And he's 28, probably pretty raw, didn't have the right entry. But the thing is, I think this is so much more of a workable matchup for him against Johnson because what does Maxim like to do? He likes to wrestle, a little bit similar to Shavkat. He attempted however many takedowns. I think it was 12 in his debut. Johnson has just a 62% takedown defense, and it looks like sometimes in the positions he quits, right? Like against Cody Durden late, against Muhammad Makayev, got 12 takedowns against him. Those guys were not able to find chokes, but Johnson was able to take bottom position for a long, long time. And the interesting angle to me, if you don't want to get plus 110 on a decision, maybe you think about a submission, is because this is the last fight on Johnson's contract, right? Does he take a chance or two that he otherwise wouldn't, knowing he's got to get back to his feet and win in order to keep in UFC, than if he was fighting against Durden or Makayev with more time in the bank? Like, that's just an angle that I thought about. But, like, overall, I'm with you. I think Maxim by decision is the play here. And another thing that I want to add, usually Charles Johnson has this big size and strength advantage over a lot of the guys that he's fighting in this division. Maxim's really big for this division, too. I don't think that there's any sort of size issues. Is all the reach is identical, and a lot of times Johnson's best work has been with a big reach advantage, sticking
right.
that jab out with volume. And Maxim is the same size, similar size, and we know he's getting better alongside Shavkat. So I think Maxim is a nice parlay piece this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you look at Charles Johnson, another reason I like him to lose a decision here. I mean, he did go 3 rounds with Makayev, and
Yep,
he was able to hold off from getting submitted.
right.
So I think
Makayev
that we'll
submitted
see.
Tim Elliott, right? He submitted
Yeah,
Virgilio, and
I
and
think yeah.
Johnson just always in the right spot. It feels like.
Yeah, I think we just see a control fest here to a boring decision at plus 110. I'm in on that.
Perfect. A great time to walk the dog if we need one. And then we are on to a fight that some of you might laugh at me. This is going to be my fight of the night this week. Molly McCann, Diana Belbita. I am expecting some action between these two ladies. Honestly, Molly brings it like all the time. Like she's coming forward, she's landing takedowns, she's exchanging in the pocket. I think this is a good move for her. She's always been a little undersized at flyweight, now dropping down to 115. We've seen this fight before. This was actually Diana Belbita's UFC debut against Molly McCann. McCann won that one via decision. We'll dive into the numbers. But Maddie, the rematch at 115, it is the featured prelim. Is this a spot where Molly gets built back up a little bit? She's not quite over the hill like by age. Or maybe has Belbita improved to a point where she can then turn it around on Molly at a pretty nice betting number?
Yeah, it feels like every card Molly's a 2 or 3 to 1 favorite, and she loses every time as a heavy favorite.
Right.
And I don't know how you could back her. I really don't. I don't understand how you could back her in this fight. I think this could be a close fight that goes to the scorecards, just a stand-up match here. And I think that it could go either way. And I think the value side is always going to be on the dog here
Yeah.
against Molly McCann. So it's one of those scenarios where like you got to prove it to us, Molly, before we can actually put our money on you at this point. I'm not willing to put my money on her. I just I think it's a smart move, her moving down, but I know the size is always an issue, but at the same time, I just felt like it was more of an excuse, with
Mhm.
it was like it's kind of like when she lost that last fight by round one submission. It was
Interesting.
almost like it was embarrassing to her,
Mhm.
right? And
Yes.
like with Barstool and how the UFC is trying to build her up, and then I almost get my gut feeling and intuition is like this is like a scapegoat where it's like, oh, I'm not big enough, I got to move down, um, and that's the reason I'm getting submitted every time I fight. But I think it's just a lack of a skill set. Now I don't think she's going to need that submission defense in this fight.
Mhm.
But again, I'm not willing to lay that type of juice on her as a favorite here.
What if I came on the contrary and I said Molly's one of my favorites on the card this week? It is like I agree with you that usually when you have McCann in this position against any sort of well-rounded MMA fighter, it is
Yeah,
trouble. Like you look Stolyarenko submission, Aaron Blanchfield submission, Lara Procopio 7 takedowns, Tyler Santos 5 takedowns, Jillian Robertson submission. Those are her 5 UFC losses. Like she can't do it. She can't grapple whatsoever. Now,
right.
Molly's shown a little bit of offensive wrestling, getting like double legs. It's all really an American style of wrestling more than um, submissions. She has zero point 0.5 attempts per 15 minutes. I think Molly's trash as far as like a submission is concerned. But like when you can get her in a spot where she's going to be able to trade in the pocket, I think she's a much better boxer than a lot of these other girls are. And that's where she starts to shine. Like a Ji-Yeon Kim easily won that decision. It was a fight of the night. Hannah Goldie knocked her out no problem. Luana Carolina pretty much controlled the entire fight. And then you look at their original matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if the box score looks pretty similar. McCann, 113 significant strikes and 5 takedowns. Belbita, 98 strikes because Diana throws a lot of volume. She puts a lot out there. She's very active, but she just doesn't have a lot of power, right? And it'll be determined how Molly handles this weight cut because at 33, cutting this much weight for the first time, not an easy thing to do. I don't am not going to sell you on Molly like for a parlay piece because minus 280. I just don't think it's a very good price, but I do think she's my comfortable win pick to win this fight in a similar fashion to the way it looked the first time. Belbita, lack of offensive wrestling, and she's basically a white belt on the ground. I think that is intentional from the UFC to bounce her back up. And like, also, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter yesterday. Belbita at her press conference this week said, "I was thinking about retiring after my last fight until they gave me Molly." So
Yeah,
I
and
never like that retirement chatter, even if especially when she's 27, it makes no sense at all, right? Like, I don't think she's horrible, but even though she's
no,
not,
no, she's
yeah,
really not. I mean, but as much as we don't like the retirement talk, that just you can on the flip side, you can be like, well, she
yeah,
loves this matchup, and that's why she took it.
yeah.
It's a striking matchup, and bro, Velveeta by knockouts plus 1,300.
Interesting. What submission?
Submission is same number plus
Yeah.
1,300.
I bet my model gave Belbita submission equity, which is just so funny because like
Yeah,
we haven't even seen it, but it's
right,
just on the back of Molly being so weak at it relative to the rest of the
right.
I've got Belbita 3.76% by sub, so probably
Yeah,
some ridiculous long shot. Let's see.
yeah. So
Doing some math here.
I don't think
I
there's really
plus
any.
2,600 would show value on sub for me, but
I was
I
gonna say there's no value there. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I think
so
this fight
Velveeta has
very
4
simple.
submission wins prior to the UFC, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, 4 submission wins prior to the UFC. Some random organizations.
Who knows who my problem with Belbita, she was armbarred by Liana Jojua. She's really fought exclusively strikers since
Rana
Gary
Lipsky
Cole.
too. Lips back in 2017.
Oh, was that regionally? I was just looking at
Arm,
her UFC
she was
sample.
armbarred by Lipsky back in 2017.
Another let's make the theme of today's show. If you were submitted by Ariane Lipsky, we can throw out the submission bet. We're doing that for Luana Carolina. I think we could do it for Diana Belbita as well. But uh,
Yeah.
I would have to see a pretty ugly weigh in from Molly to change my position. And like if you're talking about
Mhm.
DFS like type of things, I love both overs and significant strikes. If I've got Molly projected around 120 and Belbita projected around 105. So the numbers you're going to get in any sort of DFS environment is way over. That's why it's my fight of the night is for my DFS side. I think it's a fight you can stack like in FanDuel lineup formats, but I may not be like wild knockdowns up and down, that type of thing. These ladies are probably just going to trade in a phone booth for 15 minutes. Molly realized about maybe 80% of the way through round one she could take her down, and then that's what she did for the rest of the fight. I wonder if she starts with that approach, which would kind of squash some of that. But I still like
Yeah.
this as a striking battle. Molly's a little afraid of the ground, and probably for good reason.
Yeah, no, 100%. If either chick shoots a takedown, who do you think it will be
Molly,
first?
Molly. Belbita has a 69% takedown defense. It's not bad. She also hasn't fought someone with that capability in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Like, you remember her fight with Kowalkiewicz? I liked her against Kowalkiewicz. I thought she was younger. She had a reach advantage, but she just didn't make any use of it. And I think maybe a fight down the road for Molly is Carolina, and I would probably take Molly between those two.
I would take Carolina in a heartbeat.
Okay, let's run it for like UFC 301. Maddie and I will argue both sides.
Yeah, I would take her in a
I
heartbeat.
Maddie, I
And
think
I think that's kind of why I like Belbita here as a dog, because I don't take anything away from her from that loss.
Yeah.
I thought that was a valid loss. I think Carolina just looked really good, and just reminded people like she still got it.
I think McCann knocks out Kowalkiewicz cold, so hopefully Molly gets this win, and then UFC matchmakers let us.
I mean, if you think she knocks her out cold, then you think she's gonna win this fight by knockout, I assume?
She absolutely could. Not a ton of power, like from a knockdown rate perspective, just 0.30%. But when you drop weight class, the sacrifice you're making is strength and power, for cardio endurance and for those type of things. Maybe Molly becomes more of a one-shot type of artist here at 115. What's her knockout prop coming back?
Plus 470 Molly McCann by knockout.
It's a good number. But the thing about Belbita, she's just so tough. Like she's never even really shown vulnerability or gotten wobbled despite some pretty iffy defensive concerns. I feel like her chin is really, really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
So let's hop onto the main card. I think we spent way too long talking about Molly McCann.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting fight though, for sure.
I think it is. It was one I got to model just because of the data size. This one, not as much. Gilbert Urbina. I love the silhouette for Urbina, the double fists up. That looks dope. For Gilbert Urbina, really impressive win, even though it was over a Kosi brother in his last fight. Really, his official UFC debut after losing the Ultimate Fighter on short notice to Brian Battle. But hey, Brian Battle's had a pretty nice career himself. On the other side here, Chuck Buffalo certainly didn't make out a fan out of me when flipping off the crowd and calling them a homophobic slur in his last post-fight conference. Although that's not the reason I'm not a fan. It's because his fight was against Blood Diamond was horrible. Just held him
because he robbed us of our money. I think we had the under or a finish or something.
I had Blood Diamond by KO. I had Blood Diamond.
That's
Blood
right.
Diamond
I was one of those fights where I think I had both sides on a finish of some sort, and he just that was an embarrassing. Yeah, that was a terrible fight to watch.
Well, so I was curious about this betting line. I actually expected it to be wider in Urbina's favor, and there are some things going in Radke's favor. Like, do you have a particular lean when you look at this betting number? Neither of them known quantities by any means.
I'll tell you one thing. I ain't taking the dog here. He's dead to me. He's dead to me after that last fight. I want nothing to do with him. So this is going to be a rare favorite or pass scenario for me. I can't back Chuck Buffalo here.
Yeah. Didn't it feel like they kind of brought him in UFC to give Blood Diamond a win? That was the Adesanya Strickland card.
Yeah, 100%.
It felt like they brought it because he's not like a prospect. He didn't come from the Contender Series. He really doesn't have that very impressive of a regional resume. I thought they brought him in for Blood Diamond, and the thing is, he fought Blood Diamond close enough to like have a little bit of drama at the end of that fight. God, is that a bad indictment for your future in UFC?
Yeah.
And like, the thing I'm most concerned about with Urbina, don't really take a lot away from the Brian Battle fight. It was just on a few days' notice when he had to replace Tresean Gore in that
Ultimate. He went in halfway in the round 2 on that fight. He went the distance with Sean Brady back in 2018.
Yep.
Went in the round 2 with Tresean Gore. Like, I think I'm starting to believe this is one of my better favorites on the card here.
Yeah.
But I'd like to figure out the outcome I want to take him by here.
I think Hector Urbina was a UFC fighter, his brother. And so there's bloodlines here in UFC. Yeah. Urbina's pace in his second fight with Kosi was outstanding. He landed, let me take a look here. I don't have all this stuff. He landed 51 strikes about halfway through the second round, landed a knockdown, couple of takedowns, and a submission. It was like one-way traffic from that perspective. And the thing about Kosi, he has more size than Radke. That's what I'm concerned about, is just Urbina on a different level with size and physicality. The one concern would be cardio, but it's not like Radke aged super well into that fight, right? Like if Radke and Brian Battle face, Battle would be like a minus 1200 favorite.
Oh
So,
my god.
and I thought Urbina at least had his moments in that first round. You saw the cardio expire. By the way, that was up at middleweight. Urbina is a natural welterweight here at 170. So I'm agree with you. I think he's the best favorite on the card. And I think some of this unknown is just because we've seen some vulnerable moments from him, but there was always caveats or context. Like it wasn't the right weight. It was on short notice. I mean, Trayshawn Gore put him out cold. I don't think Radke has that same type of power, to be honest with you.
Hell
So,
no. And just look at the competition difference.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you can make the argument that Gilbert's fought 3 or 4 guys that are all better than the best guy, you know, he's fought, in my opinion.
Is Blood Diamond the best guy that he's fought?
Probably.
Oof. That is really.
He had a scheduled grappling match with Joe Pyfer that got canceled.
I think we can figure out how it would go.
Yeah. Bro, I want to hammer this. Honestly, I don't even mind paying the juice here on this. I think this should be priced at like minus 350.
Yeah, I was. Let's see what if we got props. I highlighted back in my notes. I wanted to circle back to round 1 and 2 just because of the sheer athleticism difference. Urbina round 1 plus 290, round 2 plus 600. I will absolutely take that on a guy that I probably would put closer to minus 300 if I was going to line this fight. He's still got some concerns, but like I just don't see Radke as UFC caliber. So
no, I agree.
So we'll move on. Look at you and I. We had some good reads in Canada. It was a good night. Got some unlucky breaks, and I think we're on the same page quite a bit here today.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only fight we're really complete opposites is that Molly McCann fight.
Oh, do you think you'll bet Belbita in that spot?
I think I will. I think I'll bet her. I can't. It's one of those scenarios, and again, this happened just the other week in a different way. It was on the Neil Magny round 3 submission. Yeah. But this is another fight that I would rather lose money betting on than miss out on my read on it. And until Molly McCann proves she can beat anyone, I'm gonna auto fade her when she's a 3-1 favorite. There's just no scenario where I think Belbita is good, bro. Like that fight against Carolina, I think she looked solid. Like
if you and I lived in the same area, I would bet you a Chipotle burrito. You can have Belbita's money line. I will take McCann by knockout, and then the 3-way would be a push if neither of them happen. And I think Molly's knockout would be more likely than Belbita winning. How about that?
I'm in on that bet. We can do it remote.
Sure, we'll do it remote. So next up, kind of an interesting fight, always an interesting one when we got a Dagestani wrestler involved. That is Aliaskhab Khizriev. I knew I was probably going to butcher that name, as I will the rest of his UFC career here. Some weird red flags around Khizriev. We haven't seen him in a while. He made his debut against Dennis Talulin almost 2 years ago. Now coming back, we thought he dropped to 170. Now he's still at 185. Taking on Makhmud Muradov, coming off one of the more impressive wins of his career, just totally toyed with and ragdolled Brian Barberena, old man Brian Barberena up in weight. But it was still an impressive win for Muradov. He's had some nice moments in UFC. I think both of these guys are plus middleweights as far as the roster is concerned. So decent fight for the Apex. Just wondering if you have a lean here in this guy.
I don't, bro. I haven't spent a second on this fight, so I'll defer to you here.
Don't worry, it wouldn't have helped you. I think the biggest problem for Muradov is you have a guy with Khizriev's grappling, and Muradov is 3-4 in his career by submission. We saw him submitted by Gerald Mearshart, started to get tired in the second round. Mearshart got him early. Like usually GM3's thing is like round 3 coming on strong. He got him in round 2, and then we saw Muradov get pretty controlled significantly by Kyle Baralho, who I know you guys love Kyle Baralho. I'm not 100% sold still with some of the stuff that I've seen from him. It feels very strength and athleticism based more than like standout skills. So I'm not 100% sold. I know Khizriev can grapple. His striking peripherals against Tululin were actually really great as well. 64% striking accuracy, 62% striking defense. I know Tululin is a can, but that is right in line with some of the other better guys that have fought him, like Jun Park. Like you name your middleweights that's run through Dennis Tululin. Kizriev is right there. I think he's pretty good. He is undersized for this weight class. The cardio would be a concern given that I don't think he's in optimal shape if he's still fighting at 185, but Muradov has those same concerns. And you look at Muradov's strength of victory, which I think is an important thing if you're handicapping UFC. It's not about strength of schedule, strength of victory, because you'll get short notice opponents, you get things like that. He got Brian Barberena at 185, so that's actually 30 pounds heavier than Barberena's fought in UFC. Andrew Sanchez, Trevor Smith, Alessio Di Chirico. Like it's really hard for me to fade a guy from Khabib's neck of the world with those type of skills that's shown it on a really high level in Russia.
And it's not an expensive price either.
No. Well, this line's moved toward Muradov, actually. Muradov was coming back at plus 152 earlier this week. I now got him at plus 126 where he sits right now.
Wow. Yeah. Dude, when you look at Maderos on Tapology, he just looks like a fucking killer, bro. Like the picture that's on his Tapology, I don't know if you can see it.
Who?
Maderos on his
I well, so the funny thing, he looks exactly the part. He was, the Money Team's first MMA fighter, so like that's kind of an interesting backstory. Like the Floyd Mayweather team, he was supposed to be like a big thing. Hasn't really panned out that way. Like he does look for sure.
I mean, how many cans is this dude fought early? He's got 17 knockouts.
Yeah.
17 knockouts.
Honestly, when they come from that Eastern European part of the world, like Uzbekistan is his native country, who the heck knows who and what he's facing in an MMA setting?
Yeah.
Like I was just looking at the UFC sample. Now, I think Di Chirico is probably his best win. Like Di Chirico knocked out Joaquin Buckley, was favored over Roman Kopylov, even though Kopylov decided he was going to be maybe the best middleweight in the world a little bit. Probably in the middle of that fight, actually. But I'm still not impressed with that. Like, I don't know how much more impressive Di Chirico is than Dennis Tululin.
Yeah, I'm getting decision vibes here.
Interesting.
Or Maradov loses a decision.
What's the shortest? Is the shortest outcome in the fight Kizriev by submission? I assume it would be. Oh, it's actually by points, plus 280. Submission is plus 350. Muradov by decision is plus 350. That means our over here, over 2.5 rounds, minus 102. So about 50-50. I kind of like a violence bet at that number. If I can get under 2.5 rounds at minus 124. Just a lot of questions around Kizriev. Probably fighting at the wrong weight class. Hasn't fought in 2 years. Is he going all out early for the sub? And then if Muradov survives, is he in better condition to take advantage late? Like, when I've got this much unknown, I would have expected the under to be greater in this position.
Yeah, a lot of question marks here. I want to take some time and take a deeper dive into this fight, watch some footage. But I think this could be an entertaining fight, though.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny. In the comments, Austin always loves violence, but number one, I do love violence, but also I'm about to disappoint you because I like 3 of the 4 fights to come to go over. So I'm actually lame. I think a lot of times the public side is the under because people are rooting for violence. 100%. I like contrarian violence bets.
It's the under bets in the UFC is the over of NFL.
Yes, correct. 100% the same. So speaking of it over, or at least one that feels like one almost certainly to me, we got a ranked flyweight battle on tap here. Natalia Silva proved me dead fucking wrong against Andrea Lee. I thought Lee was good value in that fight. Natalia Silva made her look like an amateur kickboxer stepping in there for the first time. At just 26, she is just rising the ranks, put back now 2 ranked opponents. Vivi Araujo, potentially a third here on the other side. I was big on you in her last fight. I said Araujo by decision. We barely squeaked that one out against Jennifer Maia. I think now's the time I'm hopping off the train. Silva, I think she's the biggest favorite on the card. Do you like a dog shot here? Because I would want to hear your argument as to why. I feel like everybody in the collective MMA space thinks Natalia Silva's for real.
I think she's for real. I think she's kind of like a little star in the making here. I think she just got that it factor, I think she's really, really solid. It is tough though. I mean, plus 250 on the dog here. He's gone the distance. So the Mattybetts, Alexa Grasso, like 5 rounds against Alexa Grasso. Like, she actually took her down twice. But no, this is a tough one for me, but I ultimately lean Silva here, but I'm never going to pay that price. So
Yeah, it is. It is also women's MMA with a total that is probably also the highest on the card. Let me take a look what it came back
yeah,
on FanDuel. Over 2.5 rounds, sitting at minus 310. So like, it's really hard to cover a fight like at a price that feels comfortable if you're at minus 350. And this is probably a step up in competition. Like Araujo handled Andrea Lee, so it probably is. But the thing about Vivi, I feel like I'm selling because she's 37 and her whole game is based on wrestling, physicality. That's why I liked her against Jenny Maya, because Maya's takedown defense was in the 50s. It's not very good. Natalia Silva's 92%. She made Jasmine Jasdavicius stand and trade with her the whole time. And I think that's where the star element comes into me is, yes, her striking is very impressive, plus 2.97 striking success rate, but the takedown defense. I mean, I will be hard pressed to believe we don't have some sort of Natalia Silva bet in the parlay that we craft on the show this week, because I think she routs Araujo. It might be one of the more convincing wins of her career. When Andrea Lee was absolutely overwhelmed at distance, Vivi has struggled there already. You look how Araujo did against Amanda Hebos. I'm pulling up the official stats now. Amanda Hebos minus 50 something striking differential, right? Minus 52, outstruck at distance pretty handily by Jennifer Maya. Alexa Grasso was definitely a step ahead, even though she's the champion in this division. But Grasso was a different matchup in that Alexa's takedown defense isn't perfect. Natalia's is. And I think Natalia would be a really tough matchup for Alexa Grasso or Valentina at this point as well. Like, I had my doubts entering the Andrea Lee fight. Lee is one of the more efficient strikers in my world in this division. Natalia shut me up, and I am a believer, and I think minus 350 isn't horrible to pay. Now, will I rush to it? Not necessarily. I parlayed her in Urbina for two plus units earlier this week. Came back like minus 115 or something like that. I thought it was fine. I wanted to get that in there, knowing those lines would rise.
I like it, bro. I
So
like it.
we're pretty aligned on that one.
Yeah.
We've talked about this fight before. It was actually canceled after our show back in December. This was initially going to be on the card you went to out at UFC 296. Randy Brown got sick, so it got canceled. We ran it back here. Just so the people at home know, if they weren't with us that night, we were a little bit split on this fight. It's a weird fight. I actually was thinking about on the drive home yesterday. I was thinking about a different angle I might take in this fight, but just curious about your thoughts on it. Refresher now that we're going to re-rack it a couple months later.
Yeah, Randy Brown's kind of like just a guy that I can't really figure out, bro.
Yeah.
I think like the talent's there, the skill set. He's got great length, great reach. Like I remember which fight I was at the Oliveira Gagey fight. That's the one I saw him live. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Right.
And I remember that fight, and I think I took him as a dog in that fight.
Yeah.
He was, and he cashed. But I mean, he goes up against Jack Della and gets subbed. Like he was just outmatched there. I think he's solid. What's his number here? Minus 250.
Yeah, and it is shorter. He was minus 310 or so when we got him in December. So it is shorter now, probably because he got sick, right? Like you never know what the conditioning is going to look like. So it is shorter.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, Salikov hasn't really, like he finished Andre Fialho in round 3, but everyone kind of is finishing Fialho at this point.
Yeah.
The Nicholas Dalby loss looks a lot better on paper now that Dalby goes out and fraud checks. What's his name? Bonfim.
Yep.
That was a crazy fight to watch. I mean, that was an absolutely crazy fight. But this is tough for me. I in a pick'em, I definitely favor Randy Brown here. I don't know that I'm willing to pay minus 250 though. I think that's a tough price to get behind.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this and thinking about it, and it feels to me kind of like everyone's consensus this week is that Randy's not going to cover this number. But the thing that I wanted to keep in mind is that while Randy's probably pretty neutral to what we've seen, this is probably going to be the worst version of Salikov we've seen to this point. He's almost 40. Like 2 extra months off is a big deal when you get into that sphere of potentially being washed in MMA. We
Yeah.
saw he was a favorite against the Leech, Li Jingliang, back in Long
Right.
Island a couple years ago. Ended up getting knocked out. I think Lee was way better, the more dominant athlete that night. And then you look some of his recent wins around that, like, the Dalby was not a win. Andre Fialho has aged really poorly. Francisco Trinaldo is old as hell and a lightweight as well.
Right.
Zaleski dos Santos is, I mean, pretty good win, but Zaleski also had a +6 striking differential. So Muslim hasn't fought a really high level guy in a while. And Randy Brown, you look at I think he's 7 of his last 8 as far as wins are concerned. Maybe let's see.
Yeah. I'm pretty
He's
sure.
been a
Yeah.
meme victim, right? Like Jack Della got the club and sub in Australia, so that was on Jack Della's turf. Vicente Luque got him with the knee that was, it might have even been a grounded knee by technical standards based on how that Arnold Allen fight looked. But
Yeah.
and then Nico Price got him with the hammer fist from bottom. But like all those guys are multi-time winners. None of them are embarrassing losses. I actually have an angle here that I think I'm going to take, and I got to change my article on FanDuel Research, is that I kind of like Randy Brown by submission here.
Ooh.
Salikov is a base striker. He has gone to his wrestling in spots where he had a size advantage, but I feel like Randy Brown's submission game is so underrated. If you remember, he got a one-armed guillotine of Cowboy Oliveira,
Yep.
got a triangled Worley Alves. Like,
Yep.
it's very curious to me when you look at the individual results of this fight. Brown by points is +125. I think we're all in agreement there, although my model actually sees value on the under in this fight. And so I start thinking about how would it potentially happen. Salikov was finished on the ground by Jing Liang. It was ground and pound. It was not a submission, but Randy's got those big long arms for this division, and we've seen it before. I could see like a mounted guillotine. I could see a triangle. I could see a head and arm choke. And Salikov, if Salikov is not landing power shots to test Randy Brown's chin, I think Brown wins this running away just about any way he wants to. Like, that's why I think a lot of people like Salikov, is because he's got the power element. I look at his, let me check his knockdown rate in the model here real quick. It's pretty good. It's not like imposing. It's 0.87%. So elite in UFC is about 2%. 0.87% is decent power. But I don't think Brown is chinny just because he got knocked out by Vicente Luque, by Jack Della Maddalena. I don't see this guy as chinny. In fact, I'm
Yeah.
not sure Wellington Turman in his last fight didn't have more power than Salikov will pushing 40. So I like Brown by sub here. And the favorite everyone says isn't going to cover. I like Brown by sub, and maybe it's quick.
Yeah. This I'm so torn on this fight, bro. I mean, because Salikov has some good wins too.
Yep.
Like the Dos Santos win, Francisco Trinaldo. I mean, Fialho's he's okay. I mean, I know people like he's chinny and whatnot, but
Yeah.
he dominated that. He dominated. I mean, Fialho is a really good striker.
Yeah.
Say what you want about his durability.
Yep.
But Salikov outlanded him 56-17 before getting that round 3 finish.
Yeah.
And like I just think he's an underrated guy. I mean, he beat Dos Santos. That was back in 2020. I'm torn with this fight. I do like your submission angle though a lot. I think that makes a ton of sense. Salikov was submitted back in 2017. The number's pretty good on it. Randy Brown's got a few submissions. He's got some sneaky submission games. So I think that's a cool angle here. I would look at that, but I don't think I definitely couldn't back his money line in this spot.
Yeah, dude, sure. You look at Salikov's level competition in UFC. Nick Dalby, no submission danger. Fialho, nope. Li Jingliang doesn't average very many submissions. Trinaldo, not really. Zaleski dos Santos, no. Lariano Staropoli, no. Nordine Taleb, Ricky Ramey. Like, these guys are all base strikers. Randy's really the first guy that he's faced in UFC that has legitimate, tangible UFC success with submissions. And like, I think I would love to see Randy lean more into his wrestling and grappling if he's going to advance, because he is a little chinny and he is a little bit taller. But the thing he does have, he's got those big long limbs for trips and on the cage and things like that. I'd like to see that pivot from him, and I think he might be able to find the rankings if he did.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
So
like
let's
it.
move on to the co-main event. It is a banger.
Yeah.
These next two fights coming in are bangers. I gotta
This
give
is
it
the
to the
people's this is the people's main event right here.
yeah. We got a high level ranked lightweight fight, and we are all in on it. I can't wait to hear Maddie's thoughts. Renato Money Moicano taking on Drew Dober, a couple of guys that have won in UFC. They both had some bad moments in UFC. Like these guys are total veterans, total pros. A little bit of a clash in styles here, but I think both guys are decently well-rounded. Okay. And so that you don't have a particular lean there. Moicano's taken a lot of money this week. I know he was minus
Has he
136.
really?
Yeah, he's minus
I feel like
136.
everyone's talking about Drew Dober as a dog, but
Yeah,
again,
it's weird.
what people talk about on social versus what's actually bet, I know are two different things.
Yeah. And so Moicano now almost a 2-to-1 price tag. I think you're getting to the point where I understand the Dober argument quite a bit. Like, do you have a particular lean in this guy? Because I've already bet it. I put it out on Twitter a couple weeks ago. Just curious what your angle is here.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that are hammering Moicano here, like, I mean, how do you really feel about his takedown accuracy and like him getting this fight to the ground? I feel like Dober is a vet. I feel like he's gonna keep this fight standing. Honestly, I also don't think Moicano is as chinny as people think.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's two extremes on this fight, right? Like, most people are like, "Oh, Moicano's gonna get a fight to the ground and submit him," or it's like, "Okay, Dober's just gonna knock him out on the feet." I could see a world where this fight goes the distance.
I
And
was
I know
gonna say
that sounds
that sounds like a cheeky over when you say it like that.
right, 100%. I want to see what this number is, but like, I could see a world where Drew Dober wins a decision here. Um, let me see what that number's priced at. But the fight to go the distance plus 250.
Yeah.
You
Just
know,
like based on landing harder shots for Dober is how
yeah,
you
just like doing more on the feet, landing the bigger
yeah.
power shots. I mean, I look at Moicano and like, he's had some knockout losses, but even in the which fight was it? The Rafael Fiziev fight.
Yeah.
He wasn't that was a crazy combination that put him out, and he wasn't out. Like, he recovered and the ref stopped it. I don't wanna say it was an early stoppage, but that was just a nasty combination.
Yeah.
But then he goes 5 rounds against RDA. Um, and outside of the Fiziev knockout, Korean Zombie, who obviously packs a crazy punch, that was back in 2019.
Yep.
The Jose Aldo one is tough, right? Just because Aldo's not a guy that has like crazy power. But I don't know. I don't know that Drew Dober is going to come in and starch him. And I also think that, I mean, Drew Dober's takedown defense is only 56%, is about 56%.
Yeah.
But like, 5 of those takedowns were against Brad Riddell. Islam got 3 of them. But like, Dober he's only been subbed by Beneil Dariush and Islam. Like, if you're gonna get subbed by opponents, those aren't bad. And that's recent, right? If you really go back to like 2016, 2015, like, yeah, there's some submission losses back there. But I just feel like at this stage in his career, I don't see him getting just taken to the ground by Moicano and submitted and wrapped up. What are your thoughts?
I certainly think it's possible. I will say I want to hear your thoughts on this comp. I feel like Renato Moicano. If you've ever been to Walmart and you see like the Great Value brand, I feel like Renato is Great Value brand Charles Oliveira, because it's a very similar story. In 2020, he was fighting at featherweight, moves up to 155. I think it's helped his durability. Fiziev was a tough fight. 2 fights into your lightweight career, like you said, the stoppage wasn't perfect, and Moicano has moved up, and I think he's been better for it, and he's just going to be stronger. We kind of saw this with Poirier as well. The more 155 camps he's got, the frame is larger. It's more filled out, and so
Yeah,
I certainly think that he had a similar leap to Oliveira where he was able to use his speed, and he's got great submission skills, 0.7 attempts per 15, but we saw him just wrap around Alexander Hernandez like a boa constrictor. He submitted some Brad Riddell as well. The Rafael dos Anjos fight was taken on 5 days notice. So I don't know how much you even want to hold that against him. And he still went the full distance. The thing that I want to remind you and anybody else,
peppered up though, that he got pieced up that whole fight.
I think that's honestly why he's had a bit of a layoff, is he took a ton of damage in that fight. Riddell was pretty easy money for him given the gap and submission equity that he had there. And then I think he's been off for a bit. Like, Dober is not a guy you want to take a bunch of damage and then go fight, right? 1.11% knockdown rate. Like, The thing is, I don't think Moicano's chin is bad. He's got an elite 60% striking defense, and I fired 2 units on this at minus 136. It's now way out of the value range of my model, which I've got him at minus 150. So it would actually lean Dober at this number, but
You got 2 units on Moicano at minus 136?
136, yeah. So I got a good number, which is basically a death sentence in UFC anyway. So
I mean, you can just throw 2 units on Dober now and take your pennies to the cashier.
maybe so, but like I think the biggest thing with Dober, 3 and 4 in fights where his opponents have landed multiple takedowns submitted by Islam Makhachev. Brad Riddell landed 5 takedowns to beat him. Olivier Oban Mercier, Benny Dariush got the submission. The thing about Dober is he fades into this unranked level of competition where guys with bad striking defense, maybe like a Terrence McKinney, like a Ricky Glenn, he is able to clean up on those guys because he's a more efficient striker and he's got an obvious power advantage. Then he gets into the rankings and he struggles with takedown and submission defense. And that's, I think Moicano's approach totally dictates this fight, because if Moicano's ready to stand, Drew Dober is not only live, but he's probably favored in this spot. I don't think Moicano's out of the woods in a striking match, but I think Renato would be best served to take a submission-heavy approach. He's plus 160 by sub on FanDuel. It's a very, very short number, and I think the reason
Very
why...
short, bro. I mean, even when Dober fought Islam, it took the round 3 to get that submission for Islam.
That's when Islam was like a point fighter, though. You know, like Islam had that run of decisions early in his career.
I'll tell you one thing. Why is this over 1.5 is minus 102? I love that over. I love that over.
Yeah, interesting. That is interesting.
I absolutely love that over. I just don't get it. I mean, why is that number? Why is over 1.5 not like minus 150, minus 170? Like, why does everyone think this is going to end in the first round?
All of these numbers put together, Moicano's money line moving up, the total so low, it smells like another Moicano round 1 sub, which is what he did to Riddell, which is what he did to Alexander Hernandez. Like, I think
see that at all.
I feel like Hernandez is a better grappler than Drew Dober is, though. And so just from that perspective, Dober's takedown defense, 56% is pretty poor. The caveat being, of course, he's fought Islam, he's fought Benny Dariush, so it's not all the same. But I feel like Hanato's kind of on that level where he's a really great grappler, and it made it look really easy in those spots. I thought Moicano was going to be one of my most certain win picks. That said, I am blown away that this line movement is so stark. It is really interesting.
Yeah. No, I get it. My favorite play is definitely that over. I just don't believe that with where Drew Dober's at in his career. I have to believe that he's done enough defensive grappling and training that he can survive 7.5 minutes against Moicano when he survived 12 minutes against Islam Makhachev, or 8 or 9 minutes against Beneil Dariush. And that was years and years ago, right? And I just don't see a world where he just goes out and gets submitted in that first round. If that happens, then take my money, So sure. I love this over 1.5. I also have to believe that he's not going to be as aggressive, on the flip side, to seek a round 1 finish, because he's going to have to be more cautious defensively and not, if he's just marching forward and throwing, he could get taken down a lot easier. So I think we're going to see a more patient Drew Dober early. I think Moicano is going to go pretty grappling heavy, but I don't see him being successful enough to get takedowns that early, or maybe like late takedowns, maybe takedowns late in the first round where Dober's able to survive. But I love this over 1.5. It almost scares me that the numbers isn't minus 150.
Yeah, I like the over as well. I've got Fight Goes the Distance at plus 120. It's plus 250 on FanDuel. So I'm
crazy pretty number, bro.
Like, it doesn't my number sound like kind of more what you'd expect in like a ranked lightweight fight, like where Dober, like you said, he hasn't really been let's see, I don't think he's got like any one and done submissions on his record. Second round with Beneil Dariush, second round with Olivier Oban Mercier. Maybe my angle, because I was looking to play Moicano by sub, maybe I do play round 2-3 sub because of that discrepancy where Dober really hasn't been taken down, submitted right away. Round 2 sub for Moicano plus 850. Round 3 sub plus 1,600. Like,
I can get behind that, bro. Round 3 sub plus 1,600. Like, because again, if he comes out and just goes crazy grappling heavy,
Mhm.
and he actually has the gas tank to do it, I could
Yeah.
see Dober fade in the way he did against, Benny or Islam.
Yeah.
But to think he's gonna come out, I mean, I'm looking on some DFS apps, 7 minutes is the over under on fight time. Like, I don't get it, bro. I don't get it. I
And
love this over.
I
I could
think
definitely get behind Moicano round 3 sub. I think I'm gonna play that number 2.
I think you and I are kind of on the same page. I've got Dober 29.3% to win a decision, Moicano 16.3. So I've got more decision equity with Drew. But then I've got Moicano 23.21% to win by sub, which is a big number for me.
Yeah.
It's like basically plus 250, which
I mean, bro, I think I found out what I'm playing on this card. I'm
what do
going at least 1.5 or 2 units on that over 1.5
okay?
rounds. Then I'm gonna take a sprinkle on both sides on a round 3 finish. So round 3, because look, if Dober's down 2-0 going into round 3 because he's just getting out grappled, he's searching for that finish late. And on the flip side, if Moicano's wearing him down
Yeah.
going into round 3,
Yeah.
maybe there's a world where Dober has to gamble to, find a finish or get out of a bad position and he gives
Yeah.
up his back or something. So I think when you look at round 3 here, I think there's a lot of upside. So round 3 for Moicano on the submission is
It,
16-1, and
yep.
then for Dober on the knockout is
Okay.
17-1.
Good. I was going to tell you just take the knockout because I was going to say I will do our next show with just a mustache. I will shave my entire beard if Dober submits Moicano. It ain't fucking happening. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Now, do you think though that Moicano, because he has no knockouts,
yeah,
but do you think there's a world where he could get just some crazy top control, kind of like a Roman Dolidze, right? Like you get these submission attempts and these
yeah.
great control on the ground, and then you just get this ground and pound. I mean, bro,
How do you
Moicano round 3 knockout, 50-1 if he gets like a ground and pound there.
Yeah, but not even ground and pound. How could you rule that out when Matt Frivola, who we like, Frivola is a guy that showed a bit of power, but he is a less efficient striker on paper than Moicano. Now, we haven't really seen a lot of power from Hanato, but again, weight class changing difference with that. Maybe Dober's 35. Maybe the chin just has too many miles. We saw Terrence McKinney almost knock him out. Frivola did knock him out. Like, I don't think you need just ground and pound to justify a knockout shot. I think it is possible that Moicano maybe
Yeah,
finishes him with
I
striking
just
power.
think his chin has been cracked once in his career, and
Yeah,
for us to think that Moicano, a guy who has no knockouts, is gonna crack it, I think it's gonna have to be a ground and pound, but you could be right, I could be dead wrong on that. I just love that round 3 upside. I love this over 1.5. I would be shocked if Moicano takes I think that would you say I believe there's a better chance that Dober starches Moicano in round 1 than Moicano submitted him in round 1. I
I
just don't
I
see that
I
happening.
totally disagree. I don't think I cannot, based on looking at my data, which like Dober 1.11% knockdown rate. Again, it's very good. It's well above average for the division. It's
Yeah.
not like elite, and Moicano has great striking defense. I don't think Dober has any knockout equity in this fight, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, I wouldn't take either one. I'm just
Yeah,
saying I don't think Moicano's gonna come out and
yeah.
subbed over in round 1, but
It kind of you've opened my eyes in some cases to looking at historical durability, and the fact that Dober hasn't been submitted in the first round is really interesting. Like you take that away, I really don't think there is any round one equity in this fight whatsoever.
yeah.
So the over is an even stronger argument, in my opinion.
And what was Bobby Green's numbers like in comparison to Moicano defensively?
Uh,
Because we saw that fight play out, right? Like
yeah,
Dober could not land for shit.
yeah,
Bobby Green was outboxing the whole fight, but
yep.
then it just takes one left hand and he's out,
Moicano is
and
actually very similar to Bobby on paper, where Bobby 52% striking accuracy, Moicano's 47, so he's a little bit behind. Bobby Green 62% striking defense, Moicano 60. He's a little bit behind. The thing
yeah,
that won that for Dober is that Bobby has this bad habit of getting pinned against the cage and not keeping his footwork properly. And Moicano is much more of like if he is backed up into a corner, Moicano is very aggressive with his footwork. Like he wants either the center or he's looking to just get into the clinch and go against the cage because he thinks he's going to win there too. He doesn't get stuck on the back foot very often.
yeah, that makes sense.
Great fight. I mean, great fight. I think
I'm
it's huge
excited
for
for
both
this one.
guys.
This is a great matchup.
Yeah.
I think that could be the main event, truthfully. I think
Yeah.
that should be the main event.
Moicano said the same thing on his show. It's like, I should be, I'm not
It
saying I should be the main
I
event.
think it's personality wise,
Yeah.
I think stylistically, I think it's the fight of the night for sure.
Yeah. Well, hey, UFC sees big boys with rankings and says, hey, you want a main event? Heck, they might give one to Chris Curtis like he's asking for, which God help us all if we get a 5-round sparring match in an Apex main event with Chris Curtis. But we got the same division here. Middleweight's actually a guy coming off a fight against Chris Curtis. That is Nassourdine Imavov from France. Weird headbutt ended that fight, but there was no doubt who was going to win it if it went all 15 minutes. That was Nassourdine Imavov, who also fought Sean Strickland. And then Roman Dolidze, this weirdo from Georgia that just somehow keeps charging forward and winning UFC fights. Like, I was skeptical of him dropping to middleweight from light heavyweight. He's done that no problem. He took you and I's money like crazy against Jack Hermanson. Like, Roman Dolidze doesn't make a lot of practical sense as a fighter, so I'm excited to see him in a main event. I think he's earned it just from all the up and down and fun results. I think this is a pretty good fight too, even though I'm with you. Maybe the last one should have been the main event, but good fight here. What are your initial thoughts on Imavov versus Dolidze?
Yeah, I think the line's spot on. I agree that Dolidze should be the dog. I think he's a live dog in this fight.
Yeah.
He's a brawler, bro. He's a brawler with good submission abilities.
Yeah.
I mean, Imanov, if he fights smart, he's probably going to win a decision here, truthfully.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to bet against Roman Dolidze, bro. I mean, dude was on a tear before that Marvin Vettori fight, and a lot of people think he could have even won that Vettori fight. I do have my concerns, right? When you look at Vettori and you see how many you see Jared Cannonier land 240 shots against him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Dolidze can only land 71. I mean,
yeah.
Dolidze obviously not a volume guy, relative to Cannonier. And, I'd like to see him win that Vettori fight for me to have confidence in picking him as a dog here. But if I had to pick here, I still do kind of lean his side as a dog here. I think he is more finishing equity, obviously. And I think, there's something about him. I think he's the real deal. Like, I don't know if he's in Dolidze. Yeah. I think he's Dolidze. I think he's, Phil Hawes, everyone's finishing Phil Hawes, but it's not even the opposition he's faced. It's just kind of more about how he's done it, But both these guys, if you go back, like Trevin Giles fight, Dolidze lost that fight, but then you look at Imavov, he loses the Phil Hawes, right? I think on a split decision.
Yeah.
Whereas Dolidze goes out and finishes him, right? I don't know. I'm a little torn on this one. I will say one thing, and it might not be this fight, but in future fights, there is going to be crazy value on these Dolidze by submission props because he should have so many submissions, but they end in ground and pounds or like different scenarios here, right? Like, I just feel like, for as dangerous as this guy's BJJ is, he has 0 submissions in the UFC. 0.
Yep.
So, from your perspective as someone at FanDuel, like, what do you think about that? Because do you believe that like odds makers are literally there's more you can't make that number anything crazy, or you can't make that number too short with a guy that, doesn't have any submission wins, right? So you're automatically going to get, in my opinion, you're automatically going to get a higher number than what I believe his real value of getting, or his real chances of getting a submission is. So like right now, I think it was plus, what was it? Plus 470. Let me pull this number up. But the lead say by submission is plus 500. So 5-1 odds.
Yeah.
On a submission with a guy that's super dangerous. And honestly, we kind of feel like that's his path to win.
Yeah. What's interesting is that you say, where do you set that number? It really is based on activity with professionals. And so what do professionals look at when they look to bet a guy by a specific method when props initially drop, right? You look at the submission attempts per 15 minutes. That's a metric that I live in, 1.7 for Dolidze. Curiously enough, Imavov is actually at 1.7 as well. Even though I don't think of him as like a grappling guy. That's why my model has them as like equally likely to land a submission because they have the same amount of UFC submission wins.
That's crazy. Where did all that volume come in at? From
so those submission attempts for Imavov were empty, just like Dolidze's, but I think they were like, let's see. So he had 2 against Buckley, 4 against Shabazian when Shabazian was like
There
totally
it is.
gassed. Yeah.
Shabazian, yep.
Yeah,
That's
like, I mean, the thing about Shabazian is we know the deal with him, right? The gas tank just is not. So he got to that 1.5 round marker, and Shabazian was done for, and he was just trying to get him out of there. To me,
yeah,
it speaks volumes he didn't submit Shabazian in that spot. It's that it doesn't appear something he's super comfortable with. Like, I anecdotally would give the submission edge to Roman, but
of course.
quickly, like, high level thoughts on the fight. I modeled this, and I actually really agree with my model in this spot. It's got Imavov at 51.3% to win. So technically, the betting value is on Dolidze per the model. But I agree that maybe you favor Imavov a little bit on age. You favor Imavov a little bit on striking prowess. The thing about Dolidze that drives MMA fans nuts, he almost fights like a grizzly bear trying to maul his prey, where he's just clubbing hands at people and just mauling them against the cage. And like, he got Jack Hermanson in that calf slicer position. It's not pretty. It's not always super technical, but he is
You
so
know, he reminds me of like a Dricus Duplessis.
exactly. Yeah, Dreykus is a better boxer, but
Agreed, yeah.
yeah, that same type of come forward, pressure, not afraid. Dolidze hasn't had any durability issues, and actually Roman 55% striking defense, pretty good on paper. So it's not like he's a punching bag. And if you remember, they flashed the live odds on his fight with Marvin Vettori. Dolidze was a favorite late in that fight. He was like minus 280 as a favorite, right?
Bro, I remember because I was holding a 10-1 ticket
Yeah,
in Las Vegas.
on Dolidze by decision.
Or wait, which fight? That was yeah, the Vettori fight.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a video that got like 1,000,000 views because of it. I'm holding a Roman Dolidze by decision. It was $1,000 to win 10,000. And I had some of the BR betting guys were with me. We were all at Circa in Vegas.
Yeah.
We're like counting our money. Like we were just sweating the third round, like no finishes, right? Like just go
Yep.
the distance.
Yep.
We weren't even thinking about the fact that he might not get his hand raised. We were like, just let this fight go the distance and we're good. And then he doesn't even get a split decision. It was unanimous. They gave it to Vettori. And I was blown away because I thought he easily won 2 of the 3 rounds.
Yep.
Not off of volume, but off of actual damage.
Yep.
And Vettori just wears it so well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and he outstruck him. And but the value was it was such a good value play though, that 10-1. You almost wonder, like, this is a 5-rounder. And
Now, I was
Imavov super durable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what does that number come in at?
Yeah,
You know, by decision only plus 650. That's
You know
terrible.
what's interesting is, like, I had a hard time because I'm very far off from the market. Yeah, I told you my model has trouble with these 5-rounders, but I've got this fight 66.4% to go the distance, and I understand how that happens for both guys. Imavov, his path is really easy to see, right? He stays on the outside, doesn't let Dolidze take him down. He's able to win on points, just outstriking him for 25 minutes. Imavov against Phil Hawes got taken down and controlled a lot of that fight. He ceded 4 takedowns in that fight. Dolidze is a very efficient wrestler. So Roman could control several rounds with his wrestling. Now, Vettori, elite takedown defense, wasn't able to get to that part of his game. I'm not so sure Imavov is in that same category.
Yeah.
And like, that's why my model.
Say that again. You think Imavov's takedown defense is not as good as Vettori's?
It's definitely, to me, overrated by a 72% analytical mark. I don't think it's that good. Phil Hawes.
Well, what do you think about his overall wrestling? Because like he took Chris Curtis down 3 times, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy because like
that's the part that throws me off, you know, because like that's like the one. Honestly, if there's one thing I look at in this fight that makes me want to lean his way, it's that stat right there. For whatever reason, I'm like, Chris Curtis never gets taken down. He took him down 3 times, and part of me is like, well, maybe he'll be just fine against Dolidze. And I think again, my gut is telling me he just keeps it on the feet and wins on the scorecards.
But
I don't want to bet against Dolidze, bro. I think he's a savage.
Yeah, I think he's a savage too. At 185,
he got screwed against. Dude, imagine if he wins that Vettori fight. Who's he fighting next?
He'd be the favorite here for sure. Undoubtedly,
I don't think he'd be taking this fight if he wins that Vettori fight. I think he's probably fighting like Brendan Allen or like someone even higher in the rankings.
So at this stage, Imavov doesn't have a ranked middleweight win because he didn't get the one against Curtis because of the headbutt, right?
Yeah.
Dolidze would have 2 if the Vettori decision went his way because he has Hermanson on the record as well. Like, I think Roman's fought better competition, knocked out Kyle really took away Kyle Dawkins' durability at all. He broke his face in half, right? Knocked out Phil Hawes. Like, Dolidze has quietly compiled a pretty nice resume here in UFC. Trevin Giles' decision against him was ridiculous. Dolidze won that fight as well. Like, he's had a couple of bad decision losses from being undefeated in UFC. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely think I will be betting Dolidze's money line in some capacity. Not huge, but maybe a little bit of a lean. I do favor the over, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Dolidze was able to get takedowns. And like, we haven't seen him go 5 rounds, but I think he was fine late in that fight with Vettori. Didn't seem very gassed. And
Yeah, I want to go back and watch that third
he's
round.
got that
That
Marab
fight
Jordan
was so long ago. He's not active at all.
Yeah, that was March 23. So yeah, it was almost
It
a year
feels
ago.
so much longer than that. It's crazy how fast time goes. I guess that makes sense because I was in Vegas for March Madness, at Circa,
Yeah.
I believe it was. So yeah, feels so
Yeah.
much longer than that. That's pretty
It
crazy.
it does feel so much longer than that. Like, a little bit of what my final closing thoughts on this are that I think in a vacuum, Nasruddin Imavov is overrated. Like, Sean Strickland very much handled him on, like, a week's notice.
That's
Chris
a
Curtis.
great point. It was a short notice fight. And bro, the more I'm thinking about this fight, the more I'm like, hey, like Delisa didn't take that much damage against Vettori. We thought he won the fight.
Yep.
That was 9 months ago. Think about all the improvements he's probably made
Yeah.
since then. Imavov, again, Sean Strickland really dominated him on short notice.
Yeah.
I'm starting to be swayed here. Again, my initial read was Dolidze. Then I started looking at like the Chris Curtis numbers on Imavov, and I was like, I think the number's pretty accurate here. I mean, if this number soar, where do you think this number is going to soar by Saturday? Or which way do you think it's going to go?
Imavov has gone from -160 when I ran my numbers to now -174. So I think the thing is UFC does this all the time, the changing of the guard fights. Think of that. You and I both like Sadiq Yusuf. Edson Barboza ended up coming through. Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier, just off same division. Derek Brunson against Edmund Shabazi. Remember, that was Shabazian's coronation, and Derek Brunson ended up beating him within 2 rounds. Like, I feel like these old dogs, they get written off in this spot because Imavov does have a higher potential in UFC. He's younger. He has a chance to go toward the title. I'm not so sure Dolidze is not better right this second with some questions to answer. And by the way, gas tank questions on both sides that could bring all sorts of randomness into this fight late as far as who's fresher, who we don't really know.
Yeah,
So
and I prefer the finisher, the guy that has more finishing equity in this
I
scenario.
totally agree with you. I've got so let's see, Dolidze, I've got
Oh man, I'm starting to lean towards around 3, 4, 5 for
Dolidze.
bro. These numbers, I gotta take a look at these numbers now.
Dude, the Georgia gas tank. Am I off base for that? That just I'm trusting Marab and like that Dolidze Georgian gas tank for just he'll be in shape.
Yeah,
We haven't seen him tired. Like, I feel like he's been decently fresh deep into his fights. And
bro, these late rounds, the lead say round 3 KO 25-1, round 4 30-1, round 5 40-1, round 3 submission. They're identical numbers pretty much. 30-1, 36-1, 48-1. Basically, the lead say late 3, 4, 5 is gonna pay probably north of 15, 20-1 if you just take the in round props.
This is Maddie's world. I think there's value on Dolidze to win in the over. That's pretty much all I can get. Like, I couldn't imagine diving that trough because I don't know what Imavov's going to look like 3.5 rounds into this. He's had some gas tank issues previously. He looked pretty fresh in the Curtis fight. It's just tough to tell.
Plus, it's just a different stylistic matchup for him. Like when he fights Sean Strickland, it's just a boxing match, right? Like Dolidze is going to make this dirtier. I mean, who else? The Chris Curtis fight that was
Curtis,
round 2.
by the way, Curtis, former 170 pounder, Dolidze's taken him down too. Like, I know Chris has had good takedown defense against other dudes, but like Dolidze's a different animal.
I mean, he couldn't get Vettori down, but I don't think he really tried. I don't think he shot a takedown, did he?
Nope. Oh, if he shot one, Vettori has notoriously elite takedown defense. Like, that's his.
And he didn't even try. He's like, I can win this fight on the feet, and I thought he did win it. Which that just goes to show you his confidence on the feet there. And that was 9 months ago. Like, I have a weird feeling I think he's been in the lab, bro. Like, I think you're gonna see a different Dolidze here who's even more improved. I mean, he wins this fight, and he could be a couple fights out.
Yeah, especially since the Vettori fight, you could have gone either way. Like if you start running through middleweight's title picture is crowded, man. It's crowded with Duplessis, and then Izzy might come back and get a shot. It's crowded. So we'll see who ends up winning out there. Maddie, it is time for you and I to build a parlay since we've got like legitimate stuff here on FanDuel. I think we'll just throw legs out there and see if we want to make it 3-4 legs, just depending on the number we get. But I'm going to nominate the squarest board on the board. Natalia Silva money line.
Natalia Silva money line?
Yeah.
All right. I'm okay with that if I can put the over 1.5 in on the co-main Moicano Dover.
Okay. I'll do it. I'm showing
if you're not about it, we can leave it off.
Well, I'm showing a lot of value on it in the model. And like I when we talked about the Dover submission thing and his submission defense round 1, like I'm starting to think my angle will be more Moicano 2-3 submission, so I'm good with the over there. Thumbs up from me and the model. So we'll toss it in here.
All right. I know we're in line with Gilbert minus 215.
Oh yeah.
All right,
let's do it. And I think we'll just take the money line there, just because
for sure.
Or submission.
I know we can't do anything in the Molly McCann fight.
I'm looking potential like slam dunk.
Pete Rodriguez money line?
Absolutely no, not doing that as a parlay piece. I don't think we have parlay pieces in any of the early fights. Not that we should put a lot.
We got a 3-leg right now, and it's at plus 273.
Maybe we don't force it beyond there because I like all 3 of those legs right there.
I think that smacks.
Okay,
let's go. I'm gonna put it in.
So how close was our last parlay in Canada cashing, by the way? Brad Katona, like a decision where I saw plenty of scorecards on Twitter both ways against Garrett Armfield, could have been one way or another, right? Yeah. And then Mike Malott money line. And we saw Mike Malott look for the first 13 and a half minutes of that fight before it went down. Yeah. So like that's why we both liked Malott on the parlay sense, and then he just completely expired. So we're getting very close. I love both of those money lines. I already have them parlayed together. I'm good with over 1.5 Moicano Dover, because what is everyone going to smash in there? Like Dover knockout powers, Moicano submission. I actually think there's plenty of value on the over. So 100 pace 273. You can place that at FanDuel Sportsbook right now. Maddie and I are looking to hit that parlay and get back on track. So appreciate you guys' time today. UFC Vegas 85 in the till. We'll be back next week. I believe it is just a fight night card next week. And then the pay-per-view 2 weeks to pour. We got Jack Hermanson taking on Joe Pyfer in the main event. Joe Pyfer main event season. He'll be back for Maddie and I will be back for that guy as well during Super Bowl week. Appreciate you guys as always for listening. You can find this show. If you missed some of it, you want to go back, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Our great team uploads it: Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google Play, all of that stuff. If you want to read my full fight-by-fight breakdown, it'll be FanDuel.com/research/UFC. I track my picks as well on bet.mma tips. Maddie will release his card, I believe, Friday or Saturday, right, Maddie? I'm not sure when you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Friday. Friday night, I'll release it.
Friday night, so he'll have it as Friday as well. We got this full content coming your way if you missed anything. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next week, take it easy. Go 49ers. I'm a Raiders fan, so I'm wearing the San Francisco hat for a couple weeks.
You think San Fran gets it done?
I do.
I do too. I think the way they rallied in that Detroit game, I just think they're unbeatable at this point.
Yeah. So we'll see how the Super Bowl plays out. We'll see how these fights go on Saturday. Until next time, as I said, take it easy.